You didn't notice that's a
I
hammer?
didn't. I'm impressed.
Just don't walk into it. Yeah. Before we get started, we have an introduction to make, Colonel.
Is that my turn to introduce?
You are
all right,
before
so
we get started.
Absolutely. Colonel Fred Cunningham is the new vice commander. Just showed up last week. Should be here for at least a year and a half, if not a little bit longer.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Colonel, glad to have you.
Thanks, sir.
We'll now call the meeting to order. We're all present. Linda? The invocation tonight will be given by Rodney, since the minister didn't show at 5 o'clock. He'll be here at 6:30, so he won't be here to critique you. And the flag salute, Colonel Quinn, would you give us a flag salute after the invocation? Rodney, thank you.
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for letting us be here this evening and be here in this town and be with this commission as we make decisions that be guiding in your light. Also be with our men and women overseas as they are going this holiday season. In your Heavenly Father's name we pray. Amen.
Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 4, consider approval of minutes of the regular commission meeting of December the 1st, 2015.
Move to approve?
Motion by Ben,
Second.
second by, was it Ron or Aaron? Ron. Please cast your vote. Motion carries 7-0. Item 5, awards, presentations, proclamations, and organizational business. I'm not sure we have any.
We don't have a pack.
Okay.
Two.
There are none. Item 5.1, present the pet available for adoption at the city animal shelter. Pet's on a 6:30 schedule. Okay. Do what? He and the preacher will be here at 6:30. Item 6, under hearings, there are none. Under item 7, community development. Item 7.1, remove from the table a consider a resolution creating the downtown sprinkler tap and riser grant program to encourage existing building owners to develop their existing buildings with revenue-generating entities such as commercial, retail, restaurant, or residential facilities on the upper floors, and commercial, retail, and restaurant facilities on the first floors, to accommodate mixed uses as identified in the Envision Enid Comprehensive Plan for the purpose of promoting economic development and activity in downtown Enid.
Move approval.
Second.
We have to remove it first.
Make a motion to remove from the table for consideration.
Second.
Who made the motion? David? Second by Aaron. Please cast your vote. Motion carries 7-0.
Make a motion we approve the resolution concerning the downtown sprinkler tap program.
Second.
Motion by David, second by Aaron. Good comments, discussion? Please cast your vote. Motion carries 7-0. Item 8. Under administration, item 8.1, consider an agreement with Oklahoma Gas and Electric Company, Inc., in the amount of $688,146 to relocate transmission and distribution lines to accommodate the Cleveland and Chestnut Intersection Improvement Project, City Project R-1311A.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners, City Manager. This is I'm going to give you a presentation on the agreement before you to relocate utilities for OG&E. This is to provide for the Chestnut and Cleveland intersection project. It also provides for moving the OG&E utilities Cleveland Boulevard project, which will follow suit as well. It clears both of those projects. First, I just want to present a breakdown of the cost that was presented by OG&E for the relocation. What we have here across the top is the two entities, City of Enid and OG&E, and there are two sets of lines being relocated to clear for the improvement. There is a distribution set of lines that is partially on city right-of-way and partially on private easements by OG&E, and the cost here is separated to show the cost share. OG&E has responsibility to move their improvements off of when they're on our existing right-of-way, and we are in the obligation to participate with them in paying for moving of lines on private easements. We also show costs for the transmission line at $437,430. It is entirely on a private easement, and under the standards established, is entirely local communities' cost share to provide for that relocation. You can see that adds up to, those two add up to the cost of $688,146.40 for relocation of the aerial lines for the city costs, and OG&E's cost is share is $219,7685. Next is I want to show you the actual location. Talked about the dollars. This is what we've shown you the map showing Cleveland Street from south of Chestnut to the railroad tracks about a half-mile north. The total length is probably a little more than a half-mile. Also, we have the intersection includes a section of Chestnut on both sides of Cleveland Street. We've outlined in the red dots here the project area, and the hash mark area is the existing easement that OG&E has on the just outside and on the west side of our right-of-way. I want to go through the plans fairly quickly. This is the plans for relocation of the distribution lines. And this page here is just the lead page. We'll start at the bottom, south, and work our way up. And what I want to show you on this set of plans is we've identified the poles that are on easements with the red circle. And again, these are still south of the intersection. They're on private easement. We've identified the poles, existing poles that are on the public right-of-way with green circles to identify those. This is the intersection shown here of Cleveland and Chestnut. This is Chestnut to the south. The new line is, these are the existing poles here. The new line is being moved to the west. Both lines will be moved to the west to clear the improvements.
I'm sorry, Robert, we can't see what you're pointing at when you point.
You're all right.
I'm trying to look through the back of that thing.
Verify. Cleveland Street, Chestnut, the lines, we have circled the poles that are in green that are on our right-of-way, distinguish those on their private easement. And I'll go back a slide just to start to the south end. We've come up to the intersection, and then going north of the intersection, you can see the poles are generally on the west side or on private easement. On the east side are on our public right-of-way. And this continues north to the railroad right-of-way, fairly shown angling across at the north end. And the cost share is split out based on the existing poles, on the number of poles in existing right-of-way, number of poles on private easement. That's just one to the north. This is I'm going to provide you now a copy of the plan for the transmission line, very similar. That is entirely on private easement, and this is the improvement plan starting again south of, the north is to the left on this drawing, south of Cleveland, south Chestnut on Cleveland. And you see the new alignment going up to the intersection and north of the intersection to the railroad tracks. And I think there's one more. Yes. Just past the railroad tracks where they tie back into their system.
Tell me again who the transmission lines will be on. What's their
Transmission lines,
what's their moved?
transmission lines will be they are approximately 54 feet to the west of the center line of the road. So they will be on They will be within our right-of-way in most cases. However, OG&E's easement, private easement does, authority does maintain with their lines. So they'll be within our right-of-way, but still within their easement.
And the distribution lines.
Same on the distribution lines will be in our right-of-way, in our new right-of-way acquired, but will be in OG&E's easement on our right-of-way, because they overlap.
They have to be moved again.
No, sir. Not for any foreseeable future. This is a permanent installation for this roadway improvement.
Even when the east side of Cleveland is developed?
Yes, sir, these are on the west side. These lines are not anticipated to be moved for the life of the roadway or the power supply. Development on the east side will not affect, it may affect some poles, but there are poles that were put down on the east side recently, and those are put within our right-of-way, on our right-of-way, but they're outside the roadway improvements and will not be affected by future road improvements. Where they're affected by the developer's improvements is up to the developer, but they're not affected, they will not be affected by the road improvements.
Which would then become the developer's expense.
Yes, sir, that's correct. And I don't know there is any cost to developer. I think they are properly located, provide for for the road improvement for sure, and most likely provide for the developers, but we don't know, development, we don't know how development's going to place their driveways at this point, so we don't have that answer, but they provide reasonable accommodations, okay?
Thank you.
We did discuss with OG&E the option of putting the lines underground. This agreement is to move them, but it would be an aerial agreement. What we did provide is information we were provided. OG&E has not placed any transmission lines underground. They don't have the expertise because they have never placed transmission lines underground, at least not in the last 50 years. They've all been aerial for a number of reasons. One of them is basically the substantial increase in cost, a great multiplier to try to accomplish that. Also, the life expectancy on underground and transmission lines is very limited, and if you have any issues that occur, that you have a problem with the underground system, the time it takes to put those back into service are extensive. So in our discussion with OG&E, they haven't developed the technology to put transmission lines underground, basically because they don't perceive that they would be a need to. Not that it can't be done, but because of the cost and other factors, they have not developed that technology. On putting the distribution lines underground, they can do that. We've done it downtown. Their estimate is about $1.5 million a mile. This is probably about 5/8 of a mile in this project to give you comparable costs. So it could be done. It wasn't anticipated to be done here because the transmission line is going to be aerial anyway, but they do provide that it can be done. It's just a matter of cost. But what's presented to you is the agreement to OG&E to relocate these utilities for the dollar values listed, and upon approval of the agreement, OG&E would proceed with preparing to relocate the utilities. We are looking to clear the utilities over the next 6 months to provide, certainly by the next budget period, to provide approval so we can provide certification to the state that we've moved our utilities and are ready to proceed with the construction project.
Gerald, how are we going to pay for this? Has it already been approved in the budget?
Yes, this particular item is budgeted, I believe, for $750,000 to move the utilities. So this
That's
particular
correct.
item is budgeted and it's being brought before you for approval so it can be acted upon. Thank you.
Mayor, one question, if I may. Robert, what is the rationale, since this change is required for them to provide service to that area, what's the rationale for us having to be involved in paying for it?
Okay, well, this change is not required for them to provide service. These lines are existing lines that are being requested to be moved for the road improvement project. They are not being placed in to provide service.
But they would be in the road if we didn't move them.
Well, they are.
Too close to the road.
Right, they would be in the pavement. They would be, they would be in the pavement or in the storm drain system.
We decide to make a change, well then, whatever effect that has on existing infrastructure, we've got to pay to move it.
No, the utilities, they're in structure that's on our right-of-way. If they're on our right-of-way, they're obligated to move for public improvement, and they do that. If they're on private easement, and that's what I want to present, about 53% of their system on the distribution system and 100% of the transmission line is on private easement. On our private easement, then if we acquire right-of-way over that easement and require them to move, then we are obligated to cover the cost of relocation. They're on our public right-of-way, they're obligated to move, no cost to the city.
To me, it's not a finished project right now. To me, it is not a finished project the way it sits today.
Robert, I'm not trying to call you a liar, but I have a hard time believing that Texas doesn't bury their transmission lines. You drive for miles and you don't see lines anywhere in the air. So, I mean, there's gotta be a way to do it. I don't care if OG&E has the technology or not, they're behind the game if they don't.
Right. I've just reported what our conversation was.
Second comment is, who establishes the total cost of this? We've got $688,000 to Enid. Understand the difference between right-of-way and easements and all of that, but who actually bid this project?
Well, OG&E will bid the project. These are based on their estimates, and the agreement provides actually it's an actual cost agreement, and it can change. And it most
But is
likely may well go down some because they have
Are
some
we
easement
s-
cost in here. that
Are we
provide.
stuck with using OG&E as a vendor with our franchise agreement, or can we bid that out to other utilities?
Aaron, that's not on the agenda.
How is that not on the agenda?
Their franchise agreement is not on the agenda.
He's not asking about the franchise. He's
What?
asking if we can bid it out.
Are you listening to what I was asking? Because I'm asking about bidding it to get a more competitive price, and that's what we are talking about.
Andrea, what's your comment?
His question was about bidding the moving of the poles and not the franchise agreement itself. So that's a fine question to ask.
Thank you. So are we limited by the franchise agreement to use them as the only vendor, or can we bid it out with other electrical companies?
That's a good question. I don't have the answer. We've never bid it out. I'll let legal answer. They are not the sole, well, they may well be the sole vendor for power supply. I don't have that answer.
Their franchise agreement does not address that, but because they own the equipment, then it would be up to them to decide who gets to move it. So whether they move it themselves or they bid it out to, their choice of vendors, then they could do that.
So really, we're stuck because they're going to set their own price because they own the equipment, and then we don't get the choice.
Yes, we are.
That sounds fair to me.
But like
The
Robert
only
was saying,
protection,
it
the only
could go down.
protection they may have is their prices and their costs are set and reviewed by the Corporation Commission.
The
But not
construction,
by us.
the cost of doing construction work is set by Corporation Commission?
Their costs for their operations, which can
Sure,
include
I mean, I understand
construction
that,
costs.
but this isn't an operational, I mean, this is, end of the day, this is a construction project where we award construction projects all the time. And in this case, we're not awarding the construction project through the competitive bidding process, we are deferring that to OG&E. And so your indication that we as consumers, both as a city and individuals, have protection via the Corporation Commission's regulation of rates is accurate, but I'm not sure that would apply in this instance because this has nothing to do with the rates or service, it's a construction project. Is that correct, Andrea, or?
Yes, I'm not aware that the Corporation Commission.
I mean, clearly this is, this doesn't follow the kind of competitive bidding process the way we traditionally would award a construction contract, correct? And clearly we are allowed to, I mean, this is a legal act. Otherwise, there would be communities and counties all over the state having a much bigger problem considering the
Right.
scale of OG&E.
Yeah, and the issue is we don't own it. We don't own that equipment. We don't own those poles. We don't own those lines. And so we have to pay the owner of those lines to move them.
Right.
And so they get to bid it out.
Got you.
It's not truly our construction project. It's theirs so that they can make way for our construction project.
So if we had to,
Following.
move a McDonald's in order for a city street widening project, which will never happen, but if we had to, we would pay McDonald's, go build a new McDonald's. We wouldn't award the construction of that, even though it's being done for our public right-of-way improvement or
What
public.
we would probably do in that case is purchase the McDonald's and allow them to go.
Well, don't get picky, but yeah. Then we would own a McDonald's, and there we go.
But we
There
would
you
have
go.
some mechanism in place to control what we have to spend. Either
Presumably.
way, right? In this case, we don't.
That's correct.
We knew that when we voted to build a boulevard there, Aaron. That we were.
I'm not saying that we didn't. It's budgeted. I agree with
We
that.
we knew that to begin with.
I just think that it's kind of shady that we don't get to participate in the actual budgeting or the cost of the program. And we can budget it. I understand we've got $750,000, and Mayor, you don't have to agree with it, but it's pretty shady.
I don't agree with you.
I didn't figure you did.
But it kind of gets me, though, I don't think they try to get along with the city because they're gonna make a lot more money off the whole addition. There was nothing in that 40, 60 acres. It's gonna be full now. Electric meters are being running.
Absolutely.
So there's no getting along. It's just whatever they want to charge, they charge.
We're going to make money hand over fist.
Mayor, John Little with OG&E is here if you'd like him to address some of this issue.
Sure, John?
Well, good evening, Mayor, Commissioners, City Manager, staff. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. Great presentation, Robert. Couple points as far as bidding out, Commissioner Brownlee. You know, we own the system, and so, but we're very transparent. We've provided our engineering estimates, our costs to engineering department here. You've got those? Right. Okay. So he's got all the figures that went into the calculation. It'd be very similar if the city were, doing a repair on a city-owned piece of property. You know, you're gonna do an estimate, figure out what it's gonna be with your own engineering people, because you own the stuff. Well, we own this stuff, so we're entitled to do those costs, but we show you the method of how we figure those costs. So does that take care of that?
Yes, except you're paying yourself to do it. So, I mean, if you were using an outside entity to do that construction, then you would then competitively bid the project. But you're basically setting your own cost to pay your own people to move the lines that you own, and you're asking us to pay for it. And I think, I'm not saying that you're doing anything wrong, John. It just seems kind of shady, because, you know.
It's no different than the city staff, engineering staff figuring a cost for what they're doing.
Well, it is, because then they send it out for bid, and we get 3 or 4 people to respond to it, and we pick the lowest one.
And we as a company will do a portion of the work, but then we also will bid it out.
That's what we don't get to see. So
Because it's not your stuff.
I understand, but that's what you're asking us just to assume, that you're.
It'd be like OG&E saying we need to be able to be involved in the bid process for a water line. That's not ours.
It's fine, it's not our stuff, but you're asking us to pay $688,000 for it.
Right,
So
exactly.
it seems like it's kind of our stuff.
We don't have to move anything. If the, city decides not to do anything, then it's just status quo. So, we're having to move, we're being asked to move because the city is expanding. So we want to.
It needs to be done, John. I'm not saying that OG&E is doing anything inappropriately. It just doesn't seem like it's a real upfront deal. And
We're, as a company, we've been in business since 1902. We wouldn't have been around for 113 years if we didn't have high integrity, transparency, and
again, just saying it doesn't seem like it's a real upfront deal. You have a lot to gain by adding all those customers into your system.
it's going to be a good fit for Enid, it'd be a good fit for OG&E, absolutely. And I might add, there was, I think Robert mentioned that new line on the east side that was recently constructed last few weeks, that new overhead line. That one was built in order to accommodate the new 200-unit apartment load on the west side, because the west side lines, what you're talking about tonight, the underbuild, the distribution underbuild on the same poles as transmission, that will not have enough capacity to pick up those apartments. That underbuild is picking up the neighborhood market and also will pick up the future single-family residential homes on the west side. But that new Esplanade apartment complex will be served from the east side, will bury 4 different locations under Cleveland in order to tie into that. Also, that east side line will serve development that develops on the east side as well. So I just thought I'd add some clarity to that. to your comment, Commissioner, about transmission lines in Texas and so forth, the industry as a whole is very reluctant to bury transmission grade, transmission being 69,000 volt and above, just the enormity of it. But we're not saying it can't be done. I mean, it can be done. But the biggest prohibiting factor typically, because the customer can't pay for it or doesn't want to pay for it, is the cost. And I was visiting with some folks today, and they said typically it's about a 10 to 1 difference. So to put in about a mile of overhead transmission, averages between $500,000 to $750,000. 10 times that, $5 to $7 million would be what it would cost to bury that same 1 mile line. But in addition to the cost factor, as far as why the industry doesn't do that hardly at all, with very rare exception, is the cable that's involved is fully insulated, as you can imagine. You know, I mean, you're going to, let's say you have 69,000 or 138,000 volts going in the ground, you know, in something this big. It can't be, it has to be held captive. It can't be able to be, you know, out where it'll shock people. Unlike in the air, when you've got transmission structures, you know, where the lines are large ones, maybe 100 feet up in the air from the ground to those conductors. Those are bare conductors. If you were to reach up and hold one conductor and had a wire and touch another conductor, you're fried, okay? But typically there's no problem with the public getting into that, so those lines are not insulated. They're all bare. They're just solid cables up there. In the ground, you can't just put those solid cables, bare cables. They have to be fully insulated with a jacket. Well, they call that dielectric factor. So when the engineers have to design these, in fact, to do an underground system, such as, let's say, that half mile of the existing overhead now on the west side, to put that underground, our engineers would work with factory engineers that actually develop the cable. Each cable has to be developed for the application with the type of insulation, the length, and so forth. It's not like we can just go and pull something off a reel as we would if it were an overhead line or if it was a distribution underground where you're talking about 12,500 volts. So when you get to those high voltages, it steps into a whole new dimension, notwithstanding the fact, like Robert was alluding to, there's an outage factor time. If you have an outage, or it's not so much an if, but when you have an outage in an underground line, that entire cable will have to be removed, new and ordered. An outage could last up to 6 months based on historical industry records. So, you know, underground sounds good, you know, but it's not always a case of out of sight, out of mind. Maybe out of sight, but as a utility, we're thinking about it in the sense that with that high a voltage, it's just not a proven method for conduit in the ground. And also, when we start our engineering project, if you said today we're going to pay $7 million or $5 million to do a piece of underground, it'll probably take about 2 years before it gets in the ground because the engineering is involved. We've got to order the cable and so forth. So a lot of different issues are involved. So bottom line is it can be done. It really can be. But it's extremely undesirable from OG&E's standpoint, and I believe look at the whole factor from your standpoint as well. So I'll answer any other questions you may have on that. Or okay.
Further questions, comments?
Thank you.
Robert? Anything else?
That concludes the presentation. I think OG&E in the past on these type of projects have provided information on their bids and the bids they received on that, but and they do bid a portion of the work, but they do a portion of the work with their own forces as well.
I think OG&E ought to do their job. I don't have it. We have a motion.
Move to approve.
Motion by Ben. Do we have a second?
Second?
Second by Ron. Further discussion? Please cast your vote. Motion carries 4-3. Item 8.2, consider a resolution supporting the Enid Public Schools upcoming school bond issue on February the 9th, 2016.
Move to approve?
Second.
Motion by Ben, second by, was that David? Further discussion? Please cast your vote. Motion carries 7-0. Item 9, consent items.
We need to pull item 9.4 and discuss it separately, Mayor.
Okay.
Move to approve everything except 9.4?
Motion by Ben,
Second.
second by Rodney. Further discussion? Please cast your vote. Motion carries 7-0. Item 9.4, award and execute a uniform rental agreement with Aramark Uniform Services in an amount not to exceed $28,439.84 for the first year, with the option of renewal for 5 subsequent fiscal years.
Move table this until the next meeting.
Motion by David to table,
Second.
second by Tammy. Further discussion? Please cast your vote. Motion is tabled. In favor, 7-0. Item 10, recess to convene as, we will now recess to convene as the Enid Municipal Authority. Item 11, all of the trustees of the Enid Municipal Authority special meeting are present. Item 12, the Enid Municipal Authority special meeting is now in session. Item 12.1, approval of claims in the amount of $119,185.53.
So moved?
Motion by Ben,
Second?
second by Ron. Please cast your vote. Motion carries 7-0. Item 13, we'll now adjourn to convene as the Enid Economic Development Authority. Item 14, all of the trustees of the Enid Economic Development Authority are in attendance at the special meeting. Item 15, the Enid Economic Development Authority special meeting is now in session. Item 15.1, consider and take action. You gave me the small print when you. Are you gonna get behind there? Whoa.
There you go.
I'm just jerking your chain. Let me have that bigger print, that is better. I have good glasses, but that print's too small. Item 15.1, consider and take action with respect to a resolution authorizing the Enid Economic Development Authority, the authority, to issue its sales tax revenue note, taxable series 2015, the note, in the aggregate principal amount of $2,920,000, waiving competitive bidding and authorizing the note to be sold on a negotiated basis, approving and authorizing execution of a sales tax agreement by and between the City of Enid, Oklahoma, the city, and the authority pertaining to a year-to-year pledge of certain sales tax revenue, approving and authorizing execution of a note indenture authorizing the issuance, security, and securing the payment of the note, providing that the organizational document creating the authority is subject to the provisions of the note indenture, authorizing, directing the execution of the note and other documents relating to the transaction and containing other provisions relating thereto.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we approve the resolution utilizing Security National Bank of Enid's 7-year, 1-year deferral option.
Second.
Motion by David,
Second.
second by Tammy. Further discussion?
I want to just make the comment, Mayor, that I'm very pleased to see local banks bidding on this project this time, both Bank of Oklahoma and Security National Bank. I think that reflects at some level that our local people think we're doing the right things. And those are very competitive bids, and I compliment both of our local banks for getting involved in this project.
I would agree with you. Any further discussion? Anybody want to hear from John or Nate?
Thanks for coming.
Good job on that. You want to say something?
It's a nice thick stack of reading material.
Enjoy your trip home. We have a motion and a second. Please cast your vote. Motion carries 7-0. John, Nate, thanks for your work.
Get her done.
Item 15.2, approval of claims in the amount of $16,941.33. Rodney.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Tammy.
Much. It's gotta be 4
Second.
numbers or less.
Second by David. Please cast your vote. Motion carries 7-0. Item 16, we will now adjourn to convene as the Enid Public Transportation Authority. Item 17, all of the trustees of the Enid Public Transportation Authority are in attendance. Item 18, the Enid Public Transportation Authority special meeting is now in session. Item 18.1, approval of claims in the amount of $2,497.81.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Ben, second by Tammy. Please cast your vote. Motion carries 7-0. We'll now adjourn to reconvene as the Enid City Commission. We do, where's the public discussion right here? Okay, we will now adjourn to reconvene as the Enid City Commission. Item 20. Consider and take action with respect to a resolution of the City of Enid, Oklahoma, the city, approving the incurrence of indebtedness by the Enid Economic Development Authority, the authority, issuing its sales tax revenue note, taxable series 2015, the note, providing that the organizational document creating the authority is subject to the provisions of the note indenture, authorizing the issuance of said note, waiving competitive bidding with respect to the sale of said note, and approving the proceedings of the authority pertaining to the sale of said note, approving and authorizing execution of a sales tax agreement by and between the city and the authority pertaining to the year-to-year pledge of certain sales tax revenues, declaring an emergency, and containing other provisions relating thereto.
Same motion as 15.1.
Motion by David,
Second.
second by Tammy. Further discussion.
Let me ask the question, because I always object to this emergency thing. Why do we have to do that? I think I know, but would you please explain that to me, Nate?
Happy to do so. There is a peculiarity of your charter that requires, in order for a resolution to be effective immediately, that you've got to adopt it under an emergency clause. Otherwise, there's a 30-day period before it would be effective. It's not something that's required by statutes, but it is in your charter, so it is required by your charter to do so. So you have the ability to declare an emergency to be able to make it.
We need to do that to lock the interest rate in now and get
Yes.
it done. That's what's
Yeah,
behind it.
Yes, effectively, because the banks will only hold their bid effectively, for a day or so, based on the bids, the market today. They've presented these bids in this market, and so that way we can make the approval effective immediately as opposed to 30 days from now.
I'll let my motion stand.
Second.
Further discussion? Did you get the motion and second? Further discussion? Hearing none, please cast your vote.
I move to declare an emergency. We do need a separate vote for that, right, Andrea?
Yes.
Move to
Second?
Motion and second to accept the emergency. Please cast your vote. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you, Nate.
Thank you.
John, thank you. Item 21, public discussion. We had two under item 9.4, and that's been tabled. We do have Wayne Witten, W-I-T-T-E-N. Please state your name and your address.
Wayne Witten, 4112 Shady Lane, Enid, Oklahoma, manager of Shady Lane RV Park. The reason for my visit tonight is to discuss an abandoned house that borders our property at 202 West Purdue. I'd like to ask the city to look further into condemning that property and having that house removed, as it is a downside to my business. People drive by my entrance and see this vacant house which doesn't get mowed and is in very bad shape. And continue on down the road and ignore my business.
Mr. Witten, we'll be glad to, I'll look into that. And if you'll get with me after the meeting, I'll get your phone number too, so we can talk about that.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Item 22, consider convening into executive session pursuant to 25 Oklahoma Statute 307B3 to discuss the purchase of real property and pursuant to 25 Oklahoma Statute 307C10 to discuss matters pertaining to economic development because an executive session is necessary to protect the confidentiality of the business and to reconvene into special session to take any necessary action.
So moved.
Motion by Ben,
Second.
second by Rodney. Please cast your vote.
Finally got it in.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you for joining us for the Enid City Commission meeting. If you have any questions or comments, visit our website at enid.org.